study the module build system. I already studied, so I'm probably just gonna explain how I think it works. There's some parts that I don't understand, but most of it I think I understand. And what I'm trying to do now is I'm continue to code the headless part, because I was trying to create a layout structure based on the editor structure. So as I was studying the editor layouts, I thought that the best way to understand it would be probably to try to build it myself from the editor. So I did a project like that, but the issue is that for a lot of the nodes it's very confusing, and you have to set the values. The way that they set the values on the code is not very straightforward to see how to set it on the editor. And because ChatGPT is outdated, I couldn't figure out through ChatGPT. So the other obvious idea that I had was to just build everything from code, obviously, which I was already going to do, but I was planning to do that after I figure out the initial layout. But it's something that is a barrier right now, and I want to get over this, because this is actually the hardest part, I think. So once I get over this, I think it's probably going to become a lot easier to build stuff. Because it's and I've been thinking about this for a long time, and I still don't have a clear answer, but I'm gonna just develop the way that I'm thinking about now and probably improve in the future. But I think the way that I'm thinking about now is probably gonna work. But the biggest issue is that I want to be able to change the sync from code and from the editor. And the issue is that there are several different situations where you can start from the code, for example, and then change from the editor later, or you start from the editor and change from the code. And it's very hard to think about how to structure the code in such a way that I don't have the easiest way to not keep track of the versions of two different versions of things. One changed through the code and another one changed through the editor. So the way that I come up now, the challenge that I have now is to I changed some things on the headless code to cache the sync files before changing them. And this was another problem that I didn't want you to think about too much. So the way that I did it was just by creating another folder inside of the project called .headless, and then putting another subfolder inside of that folder called projects. And I'm just putting all the scenes in the same level. So initially I was trying to mimic or to copy the folder structure, but that was just too annoying for now. So I decided to just leave it like this, which is good enough to just put all the scenes on the folder every time you run the code, so that it saves the previous version in case you run things accidentally. But the issue that I'm running now into is that because I want to build the layout from the code, I want to build the editor layout from the code, so I have an idea from the editor how the scene structure is it works of the editor itself, so that I can think about for my case, because on my case it's probably going to be what I'm thinking about doing is just going to be several different layouts. In my case, it's going to be a variation of that. So what I'm thinking about doing is just putting a couple of functions or different functions that are going to contain initial layout structures. But I'm not really sure if I'm always going to start a project from the code and then change on the editor later, or if I'm going to start on the editor. This is kind of the issue, because then if you start, the way that I'm separating the two is by the names. And if you start from the editor, then the question is how do you structure the entry points of the function that is going to run for each project. So this is what I'm thinking about now. So yeah, I have to show on the folder structure there. I'm probably not going to stay for a very long time here today, but basically I have the headless here, and I'm thinking about on the project. So I want to try to copy as much as possible the logic that they use for the modules. Because I think that the only way to do this is the function. I'm probably gonna hard code the function that is gonna run as an entry point on the manager, I think. No, on the headless, because the headless is the codes. Headless are the functions the main functions that are gonna run. So the way that this is working is that you have this function here to get the initial state. So I created this class, which is a singleton, which is HD manager. And I initialize the class here and put it on class DB. This part I don't remember really well if it's necessary or not, but just initializing the class basically. And then here is the first main branch, which is going to decide whether or not I'm running from code a project that I'm going to start from scratch, or if I'm running from a project that already exists. Which, to be honest, I think I'm probably never going to use this one because it's just going to be too complicated to set up, because I'm probably going to have to study the project manager functionality, because there is a big difference, like there's a main difference of running the engine directly and running a project, which runs the editor, I think. Which is basically the command line arguments that you pass here. So if you don't pass this path and this /e to the command line arguments, it just runs the engine directly. And if you want to start a project, it runs the project manager. So if you want to start a project from scratch, you have to run it like that. And I think it's just going to be far too complicated. So probably most of the time what I'm going to do is just initialize the project from the project manager, like open the executable. Then after initializing the project, I'm going to change things, which is going to mean that it's going to fall here. But there might be a situation where I initialize a project, but the project doesn't have any scene. And then you would fall into this branch here. And this branch the purpose of this branch would be to create the whole first scene from scratch from code. To be honest, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm probably going to change this, because it's going to make more sense to put this condition inside of the main entry point. Because both situations are very similar in the beginning, which is this one I'm just getting the initial state. So I created this function that in Godot you have these relative paths that they create, and they create the logic of some of the classes, the dir access and the file access, should take into consideration these different paths here. So whenever you have the ras and this shootouts and the // it means that it is the root of the project. It's just an easier way to set things up, and then they handle things for you on the classes. So this function that I created here is partially copied from somewhere else that I got from the code, that I've seen that an example that they traverse the whole project. Basically, you receive the root of the project as a path, then you traverse the whole thing, the whole folder structure, and look for files with these extensions here. And then I'm creating the scene, and I get the root node of the scene, which represents the scene, obviously. And I'm going to use this root node to change the scene. So I'm keeping track of these variables on the HD manager. And here's where I added this stuff that I didn't have before. Now I'm on the constructor of this class, I'm creating the folder on the root of the project. There is .headless/project that is going to cache all the scenes. And then I'm basically saving the scenes on that root. Then I'm basically just getting the state. And what this means is that if this function returns false, this one gets it sets up the scenes, and then it puts the scenes, the roots nodes of the scenes on this project roots from the HD manager. So if this is empty, it means that the project doesn't have any scene, which means that it's a new project. And then the idea would be to build from scratch here. But what I'm thinking about now is that probably it doesn't make sense to make this condition here, because both of the situations are going to run the same function in the way that I'm thinking about doing, which would be this change project function. Because on this function is the tricky part, that what I'm thinking about doing now is I'm going to call like a generic function. So for example, it's going to be Maybe, let me think about a name. Maybe just put change project like this, because it doesn't matter the name that much now. I have to think about a better name probably. And then this function would accept the project name. So now I'm also saving the project name on the HD manager. And this function here has to be generated at build time, because it's going to depend on whatever folders I put inside of these projects here. So the way that I'm thinking about doing is that every time that I want to create a new project, I do the same logic that they do on the modules. I create a folder here, then I put the name of the folder is going to be the name of the project, so that should be the same. Then I use the project settings class, which is the class that they use to manage project settings, as the name says. And I get the project name from the class, and I call this function by passing the name. And then this function is generated at build time, the same way that they build the modules. Runtime or build time generated files. And then inside of this function, I would have the logic that is going to check if the project exists or not. And then from these points, it's going to run the entry point function for the project. So now that I'm thinking about it, it makes more sense to, because this is going to return an error probably. So I'm going to do error equals this. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about doing. So I should probably put the condition here and then just call the same function, because it doesn't matter that much, because it's going to be specific for each project anyway. So every time that I create a project, I'm going to know if I'm creating it from scratch or not. But I can check to see. Yeah, but I think that it makes more sense to change this, or delete this function. And I make this function to be created by the, I think that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to move the functionality of this into here, and I'm going to remove this, get initial state from the condition here. So I think I'm going to do the condition later, probably. Makes more sense. So let me just do that. I have to close this curtains because I can't see anything. So let me explain the stuff first. So I'm just going to remove this from here. And I'm going to move this stuff from here to here. So what I'm going to do, instead of doing the thing there, is I'm going to call the change project from here. Yeah, so just remove this function, because the name of the thing is going to be change project probably, because I'm probably going to do the same pattern that they do on the modules, which is a prefix, then underscore, then the name of the module, name of the folder of the module, then underscore, and then initialize or something like that. So I'm probably going to do the same pattern, but with change projects. So probably it makes sense to keep the declaration here. This is what I was thinking as well, because in the way that they do it this is the part that I don't understand 100%, which is the way they link the module header with the build system is kind of weird, and I don't understand very well how it works. But what I'm going to try to do is to link it like this, where I declare here, either here or some other header file, and then I just, on the file that is generated on build time, I just include the header. It probably makes sense to put on like a separate header, I think. Maybe I'll try this one first though. So the change project is the entry points, and then I'm going to have so I'm going to call change project from here. The thing is, I'm not really sure, obviously, so I'm going to have to test to see if it's going to complain or not. So yeah, the main question about changing this is whether or not I should have some differentiation from projects that don't have scenes. I think what I can do is check to see. So I can make a variable here. And then I can check to see. I'm probably gonna remove this other stuff here as well. You're just gonna pass through. Pass the logic. The other thing that is kind of confusing to think about is that I have to connect the. I might have to connect the logic inside of the function that is going to be the entry point for the projects with the HD manager. Yeah, I'm probably going to have to do that. But it's probably better to do it from the entry point function. Yeah, so probably the way that I'm going to structure is that the function is going to receive the project name and the sing root, or the sing roots. Yeah. So that way I initialize this stuff here, and then instead of looping here, I just pass to the function. So it's going to be change projects, and then this function is going to receive the. So here I have to see as well. So a string, project name. Actually, I'm getting from the. I'm supposed to get from the HD manager as well. So it would be. Actually, I don't need to declare because it's gonna be the thing already. A project name. So it passed this thing here. And the sing roots. So I have to, I think, there's going to be a string. Maybe I should do like a different name. Maybe just p name, whatever. And then the thing there. I'm gonna delete roots. So that way, if I can do this, obviously I'm not really sure how it's gonna work. Yeah, so I think this is one of the main things that I have to clarify as well, is how do they, because the way that it works on the modules, so let me explain the module system, the parts that I understand so far. This is what I'm thinking about doing. So the change project is gonna be the entry point, then this function here is gonna be generated at build time, and it's gonna be on a C++ file that is gonna be based on whatever folders I have inside of the projects. And then inside of this function, I'm going to put the if-else statements based on the name of the folders here. And then each folder, I'm going to create a pattern for the entry point function that they're going to have, which inside of this function is going to call that entry point. And then it's going to pass these things to that function. So that function, because the only thing that the function needs is to, well, actually it's going to need the save. So maybe instead of passing the sing roots, yeah, maybe, I think that makes more sense. I'm gonna have to, because this function is gonna have to have access to the HD manager, and the other files are probably gonna have, is better if they have access as well. So they're probably gonna have to include the HD manager. Yeah. So actually, I'm just gonna do it like this, and then inside of the function, I just use the HD manager. So let me explain the parts that I understand about the modules. So the way that the modules work in Godot is that you have a folder on the root of the project that is called modules. And then what Godot does, Godot uses scones, which is a build system for C++ that uses Python to scan for the files, C++ files, and header files inside of a project. And then they build the entire command that is going to compile everything under the hood. And then they expose files with certain patterns that you can use to put Python code that allows you to build the project. So the main entry point file is the sconstruct. So sconstruct is at the root of the project, and that's going to be the entry point that is works with the build system. So usually how you're going to build it is by calling scones here, and then you're going to pass whatever key value arguments you want. And then this is going to depend on what kind of logic you have inside of the sconstruct file. Sconstruct file. So inside the main sconstruct, they put logic to handle the target equals editor and the build equals s and other variables that they talk about on the documentation. And then inside of this entry point, they specify this methods py file. So this is the main sconstruct file. That is at the roots of Godot's project. And then here they have these methods, which is a file that they do some weird stuff there, to be honest, to import. So they do some Python trickery to import this file, which is another Python file that is going to have some functionality that is going to allow them to simplify or to just put the logic on another file, basically. So they use this helper module function here. And this uses Python to dynamically create the module on runtime, as far as I understand. So it's runtime of the build time, not the runtime of the C++ file, C++ projects. So it's not the runtime of the engine; it's just the runtime of the build system. So this generates a module called a module that refers to methods.py. Then they import here, and then this basically represents the methods.py file. So the main function that is related to the modules is going to be detect modules, which is this function here. And then the search path, I'm only looking at this one, but there is some other ones here, I think. If you want to have crystal modules, I don't know and understand how this works very well. But basically, I'm just assuming that it is modules. So they pass the modules path to this detect modules. And then this function gets, I don't understand the specifics very well, but just basically on common sense, you can imagine that it's just going over all the folders inside of the module folder, and then is adding the path to that folders, to those folders into these modules here that the function is going to return. And then eventually is going to use this to, on the module, that you put these modules on this order dictionary, which is modules detected. And then it loops over this. And then after it loops over this, and there's some stuff here to add variables, which I think that these variables are probably parts of a macro or something like that. Yeah, it's basically defining macros here, I think. So it's defining the macro as true. That is going to determine whether or not the module is active. And then they call this other function, this is the function that generates the file on build time. And it passes the order dictionary here. So this write modules is this one. And then this one is going to loop over the modules, which is basically just getting the, as far as I understand now, is going to get the path to that module. This is one thing that I have to figure out now, is how to, because that's the main thing that I'm going to change there. But they're basically dynamically creating the code that is going to make up the file that they generate using Python. So they put the names on these variables here. So they're looping over all the modules. They're getting the path to the module and the name of the module. And then they dynamically generate this code here, the C++ code, and put it on this variable, which is a massive string. And then they use this string interpolation to change this main code here with all the modules that they put here. So what is happening is basically they are including the register types.h file that exists on every project. that you have to follow based on the documentation. So this makes sure that the file generated at build time is going to include all the register types that exist on the modules, which is basically here. So just including all the registers for the modules on that part, this part here. Then is the defining the macro, and then here is where it defines the function. So this part here is basically this one is for initializing the modules. So this one is going to be inside of here, of this function here, because this is the main entry point function that they use across the engine initialization at different parts of the stages to initialize the modules. So the entry point function that they are actually calling is the initialize modules, and then they are dynamically generating a file by putting these variables here inside of here. So they put this tree here inside of here for each module, which creates this functionality here. So after the build time, this file is generated, and then it has the code that allows them to initialize whatever macros have their whatever modules have their macro defined based on this header here. And then the other part is for the uninitializing the modules. And then they use Python again to open the file as a write operation, which is basically allowing them to write the string to the file. And I think that's how they built the file there. And the weird part is that the modules also has sc sub file. So on scons, whenever you have an sconstruct file, inside of the sconstruct file, you can call another special function that they have, that scons have, that allows you to run other Python files to help you build everything, which is this sconstrip. So whenever you call this function, whatever path you pass here, scons is going to consider this as a Python file in the same way that an sconstruct file works. So it's basically just extending the functionality, allowing you to have more flexibility on where you put the code. And if I remember, yeah, so here they call the sc sub for the modules, which means that at this point, it's going to run this sc sub here, also exists on the modules. And then here, I think that is the part where they're going to compile. This is another thing that's going to be very annoying, because not only you have to create the function, generate the function, the file at build time, you also have to add all the other files to the build system. So here, I think what they're doing is basically, but this part I don't understand 100% sure, for 100% certainty, but I think what they're doing is just basically looping over all the modules in a similar way that they do on the write modules. And then they are just calling sconscript for each module, because this is another part of the documentation that they tell you that if you want to create a module, you're going to put an sc sub file on the root of the module you want to create. So Godot is going to run that, and then this allows you to put whatever logic you want. So in my case, this is my sc sub. I didn't have this function here, which is the one that I'm going to work on now. But I had this one here, which is basically adding I'm not really sure if I erased. No, this is the headless. Yeah. So this is not the modules one. The module that I built has another sc sub. Is this sc sub here? So this is the sc sub that I have for the module. So I'm basically just adding the C++ files here. So whenever the env is just the environment, which is a class that scons uses to build everything at the end. So this is a function that they specify, I believe, on Godot. In the same way that they have these methods.py here, they use this, yeah, I think it's probably on this file. I don't remember really well, but I do, yeah, so is this function here, basically. So because this function is basically from Godot that they add here, which makes it easier for you to add the C++ source files. So just pass you just pass a list with the sources. And in this case, I'm adding to the module sources as well. It's the list that contain the source files for the modules. And then here you pass the C++ files you want to add. And when you use the star operator, it's gonna add for all the C++ files for that level. So each subfolder you either put here or you create another SC sub and then you just call sconstruct here and pass the other path to add to the boot system as well. But just basically adding everything here. So I'm probably gonna do a similar thing here. And so here I'm doing it differently, but I'm basically it's kind of like a similar logic. I'm just adding all the files on this folder here. So what I'm thinking about doing, but this is gonna be annoying. No, actually, maybe not. So I think what I'm gonna do that is much easier probably than what they did there. You should just loop over as I loop over the projects folder and look for each folder inside. I'm going to call sconstruct for each folder. So each folder is gonna have its own SC sub, which is gonna allow me to put whatever code I want to add the sources for each project to the build. I think that's probably easier because I don't understand what they did there very well. But it is probably a very similar thing that they are doing here. I'm just not sure about the path variable. And this m.module list, I didn't follow the execution there. And also these commands here, because these commands come from scones, I think. And I don't remember really well what they do. But I assume what they're doing is just linking the header here. So it's marking the header as a dependency. Yeah. So this part I might have to do as well, because there might be some weird stuff with this pattern here that in order to make the header work, you also have to generate on build time. Not really sure. I think here what they're doing is just looping over all the modules, and then they call the SC sub. So the base path, I assume that is the path to the module. So the root folder of the module is going to be the base path, and then it just has SC sub. So every time you're going to create a module on Godot, you need to do this as well. So you need to put the SC sub on the root of the project. And yeah. So I think it seems that they're adding as a library here. So they got these env modules, which is just the environment. So when you do env clone, you're just getting the main environment from sconst, which comes from the main sconstruct file. So the main environment is initialized here. And then when you call import env, it just imports that environment to this file. So here, they're cloning the environment. And then inside of this environment, they are just adding as a library the module and then the name. And then they are adding the source files, which is the list here, based on that. Oh, so I think this is why, yeah. So this is why you have to put there. So I'll close now, but so on the SC sub file of your module, you have to put the put the module sources, because that's how they are gonna figure out what C++ files are part of the library, because it's running the sconst script here, which means it's gonna run your thing. So when you import in the environment, you have access to the module sources because they declare the module sources here, just this empty list. And then on your code, you add your C++ files to this module source, which means that when they put it here, it's gonna add as a library. And it's linked to whatever module, whatever is the name of the folder that you have there, I think. And then after they do this, this is another special thing about, not a special, but another function that Sconce has that allows you to pass command line arguments to the build. Which is basically just gonna link the thing as a library. And prepend means it's gonna put in front of everything else instead of putting at the back, as far as I understand. So here they have conditions to check whether or not it is based on the. So it seems that the VS sources is gonna be an array of arrays that is gonna contain all the sources. And then they add here. So they are adding here, I think. And yeah, they pass this pattern as well. Then in the end, they also put here. Yeah, so they are adding the final modules library that contains all the sources here, I think. Maybe not. I think that this one only contains this, probably. So this is an empty array, so you're just gonna contain this file here. So after they add each module as a library, they add the final file as a library as well, called modules. So I think I'm probably gonna have to do it one step at a time to see if I understand. And these things, I think they are helper functions. Yeah, these functions here, they build the macros probably for this file, but I don't understand very well how they work yet. But it's basically the same pattern here. See, just define module, then the name of the module enabled. So just writing this file here. Well, obviously I can just look for this on the other files. But like I said, I'm probably gonna try to do it the other way, the way that I'm thinking now. So it's probably here. It is running the function here to generate the file. Yeah, so it's writing the files through with this command probably. So if the way that I'm thinking about it doesn't work, I'm just gonna copy this way here. What I think is happening is that this env run is gonna run this function here. And inside of this function is gonna run this function here based on this pattern. Like whatever you put here as a name.run is gonna run inside of this thing here, which means it's gonna build this file here with whatever the functionality this one has. Which is very confusing, but whatever. The only thing that I don't understand very well is this value. Because I don't... The list comes from here, probably. Oh, so this one is a dictionary that is going to contain all modules that are enabled. So it checks based on the config if you can build for the selected platform. It's required dependencies. Because there are some stuff on the documentation that I didn't spend too much time looking into, but you can do different types of build systems that either include or exclude some modules. Because obviously, for some situations, a lot of modules are not needed. So this logic here is probably related to this. So it's just checking based on the current configuration if it's supposed to build a module or not. And if it is, then it puts on this dictionary here. And then it makes this env modules list to be the dictionary there. So the modules list is just all the modules that are supposed to be included. So all the modules that are supposed to be defined here, and then there it runs based on the logic. But I think, like, for my situation, it's probably easier to just put if-else statements and then check based on the string, because you can build a pattern based on whatever code you put here. So the first thing that I want to do is to remember, I think OS_dir in Python, then you pass the path. So this is one thing that I'm not really sure about it, if it is the path from the current project, from the current level you're at, or if it's the absolute path, or how do you do this? So I'm probably going to use ChatGPT to figure this out. So the idea that I have is I loop over all I loop over this folder. Each folder is going to contain the subdirectory that has the projects, and then I build the file with this. So I'm going to change this code here. So I think instead of register types, this would be the file that is like the. I was thinking about creating main, like calling it main, but I'm not really sure if that's good or not. So basically, like this name here is this path is gonna be whatever I decide to put as the file. So for example, let's say I have a first project. Let's say first. This is a project that I wanna change. Then here I'm always gonna have, in the same way that they have on modules, they always have the register types. I'm gonna have a header file that is gonna contain the main entry point function, which is gonna be probably change underscore, then the name of the folder and project. So the macro is probably not gonna. So I have to think about what header name to put here. And I think that I'm always going to include on the dynamic generator file. Yeah, so here they also have, like this is basically the final code of the file that is generated at build time. And then here they put these files that are always going to exist on that generator file. So here I think what I'm going to do is just change this so that it includes the manager header. Yeah, so manager header, so I have access to this stuff. And then inside of inside of this code here, I probably get the. So I think the first thing that I have to do is check to see whether or not the project has things, or if the project names. Yeah, if the project name is empty, but I think it's never gonna be. Oh, it's because I'm gonna receive as an argument. So I'm not gonna do this one as well, because this one should change there. So this one's probably gonna be change project. This is gonna be the function that I have there. So I have to put. Let me think about this. I also need to put headless age here. This is actually going to be, like, this file is not going to be inside of the projects folder, I think. And this file is just on the roots of the headless. And then it's based on this file. So I guess this is the one question, like one of the main questions that I have to answer now is how do they call because they call the initialize modules on the main file, I think, main CPP or something like that. No, I forgot the name, but it's basically the function that sets up the engine before everything, before it runs in the main iteration. So I need to see, because I think on that file, so they probably do it based on a macro, I think. Yeah, I'm gonna look for that. Which project by specifying path? A function based on the project name. Yeah, so the function is supposed to receive. So I'm gonna build this first, then I think about how to, because yeah, I think like, so this is the definition of the function. The declaration is gonna be, but this is the parts. I think it makes sense. Should the part of the declaration should be on the headless because it doesn't exist here as well. So where is the declaration of this file? That's the question. And it's the only place is here. So maybe we don't need to declare anymore. Oh, there's a folder. Ah, they're here. Yeah, so so the declaration is done on this static file. So the pattern that they choose on Godot is whenever you have the .gen and then .h or .cpp. Those are files generated on build time. But when you don't have that, those are files that they just hard-coded. So this file is generated on build time, but this one is hard-coded. So they just put here. So I think it's fine for me to put on the handlers there, the declaration, and then just build from the code there. And then I'm going to be able to call this. So the main question is, but I'm going to answer that later. So because you define here, on the headless code here, how they make sure that this is going to exist, and it's probably going to be a macro. So they probably define a macro as they are creating the thing there that also allows them to check whether or not to run the module function, I think, and how to include the module function on the headless CPP. Yeah, but I think that they probably include. In this case, like the declaration doesn't matter that much because the file is always going to be included. So, but I think that for running the function, it matters because then obviously if you try to run the function and the file doesn't exist, then obviously it breaks everything. So there needs to be a macro, I think, that checks. So let me turn the lines there. The main thing that I'm gonna ask now is how to loop over how to find the path. I'm pretty sure in Python is osdir, so I'm just gonna ask you. But I'm pretty sure it's osdir to loop over the directory. Just gonna ask ChatGPT. Should loop over a directory in Python and get the path through each subfolder as a iteration variable. Use the OS module list there, so it's not there. I'll just look at the call. So the other thing that I can do, I'm gonna do that as well. I'm just gonna print the path there, so I know. Probably this one is the easiest thing to do, actually. So I'm just gonna comment out everything there. Maybe I don't need to because it's inside of the function, and I'm not calling the function. I think that's what I'm gonna do. So here is gonna be projects. Actually, I think I'm just gonna put on the folder, the current folder. Well, actually, it has to be, if they are putting modules there, it has to be from the top. So I think the path we put here is from the top of the thing. So it would be header, it would be editor and then headless. And then whatever name I want here. Maybe change projects. So this one is going to be, this header is the name of the file that is going to serve as the entry point. So the idea that I have is obviously, like based on this pattern, each one, let me change here. So it's going to be change. It's just basically the same thing that they are doing there. It just changes the structure of the function. And then here, I'm going to receive, actually I don't need to receive anything, because I'm gonna have access to the manager, I think. So whatever header I put here, I just have to make sure that for each project I include the manager. Because I think that you can't really decouple. You can decouple by passing arguments, but I think it's not very good, probably long term. Because it is, the nature of the thing is already, like, it's going to be coupled, because the purpose of the manager is to deal with the configurations of projects and stuff like that. So I think that they're always going to be interconnected. The function that changes is supposed to change the project and the manager. So I think I'm not going to put macros. It's going to be a different thing. Because obviously it makes sense for the way that they did it here to put macros, because you can put multiple different things at the same time. But for my case, this is the thing I was thinking about doing before. So I have to do it here. So this change project has to receive actually the string, the projects, or maybe not, because it's going to include the thing there. Yeah, so I do it from there. So here after, actually I'm not gonna have this one. Yeah, so. So this, maybe it's better to just receive as a string instead of, I think it just makes more sense. I don't know, I don't think it matters that much. So I'm just gonna put it there for now. So if it doesn't work, then I change or whatever. I'm just gonna put it here. And actually, was gonna say I don't need to put it because it's already parts of the thing. Like I don't need to set up another variable, but I think it's just easier to write there. So obviously what I'm doing here is just getting the project name. So before I call this function, I'm just going to initialize from the project settings. I'm going to figure out how to get the project name. Then I'm going to update the value of this project name here, and then I'm going to put here. So maybe just pname, like I was saying before. So just remove this. And then here I have to hard code that the first condition is if pname is empty, I think. But maybe it doesn't matter that much because you're always gonna have actually. So I do want to check for the edge case where it's empty because there might be, but I'm probably gonna remove later. And I think it makes more sense to do it like this because you need an endpoint if statement because it makes more sense to do if else if conditions because the difference between putting multiple if statements sequentially and putting if else if is that whenever you put if statements sequentially like this, all of them are going to run. But if you put if else if, then only one of them are going to run instead of the chain, and that's what I want. But obviously it's kind of annoying if you put it as part of the variable here because I'm doing it on a loop. So it's probably easier, like it's not that hard, but it's just like slightly annoying to put the first if here. So I think it makes more sense. And it also checks for the edge case. So I'm not sure if putting like this is gonna work though. So I'm gonna have to see this. But that's probably what I'm gonna do. So here I just put condition. Yeah, so in the beginning of the function also I'm gonna have to put error equals okay. That's basically this. And then I'm just gonna copy the message there as well. To just console log a message using the macros that they use. And then just get out of the function. So after this, on each iteration, I just put else if there. So here, you would be, yeah, so it might be kind of annoying to do it. Also, I don't know why they didn't use the f string here. So maybe it's better to change. It's easier to write with the f string. Obviously, it doesn't matter that much, I think. So, else if, maybe I'm just gonna, I think I'm gonna do the f string on this one. It's easier to write. This might be annoying, so maybe it's better to just do it like that. So here I'm gonna put another string. It's basically the same way that they are doing there. Actually, it's gonna add on the other line. So maybe on this one I just put else if here and new line. Then I just do the closing. Yeah, that makes more sense. So this is just gonna put a bunch of else if conditions here after this one runs. And then it's basically just gonna check to see, oh yeah, I have to put the condition here though. And this is gonna be annoying. So how do I? Yeah, maybe if I put pname it's gonna work. So pname equals then Yeah, there we go. So check to see if the name is equal to the name of the folder. And so probably I'm going to exclude this stuff here. I'm just going to build this string. Instead of putting the try except block there. I think I'm just gonna, I don't see the points in doing this here. I think they are doing it like this, should check to see. Yeah, because on their case, I think that it depends on whether or not the module is. Because I think that this is like building the thing is after the loop. So the loop finishes here. That's obviously what makes the most sense, sure. It wouldn't make sense to create a string each time. So I'm not really sure why the... It's probably to ensure that the module has the register types, but then like if they're just passing here, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Well, it's because if the module doesn't have the register types, then it doesn't add. So it does make sense. But I think for my case, I'm just gonna try to do it like this. Just remove. Is it feasible to combine two different languages such as C++ and Python in a single project? For instance, if you require a module from Python that outputs a value X, can you integrate X in C++? If you require a module from Python that outputs X, a module from Python that outputs. I think yes. If you're using scones, yes. So you would just import the module on the... I'm not 100% sure though, because I don't know scones very well. To be honest, I didn't like their documentation that much, because it's kind of confusing to understand, so I didn't spend too much time studying it. But as far as I understand, the way that they deal with this on Godot is by they create this helper function here. They use some Python tricks to put modules as it runs, which is basically this function here. But here they also have, so I think on scons files, you can only import built-in modules on the file directly. And if you want to import custom modules from Python, then you have to use this trick here, which is basically using some functions from these modules here from Python that are from the built-in import system from Python to manually put the module on the path that Python looks for modules, which is from the sys. So the sys library in Python is the system library. And as far as I understand now, the way that Python looks for modules is by looking into the modules value, the modules key, I think, or the modules dictionary from the sys as it runs. So here they are manually putting the module here. So it's basically the name of the module that they want, and then they put the file here that is related to that module, which allows them to import the modules here. So if you wanted to use a variable from Python, for example, what you would do is just create a Python file, then use a function like this, then import your own thing, and then you would dynamically generate the C++ file with the Python stuff. And as far as I understand as well, there is a way to add Python codes, add C, maybe C++, but I think C code. C, I'm 100% sure that you can add C code on Python if you're using CPython, which is the main Python implementation, because Python is built on C. So there is a way that they allow you to put extensions. So you can basically create your code on C and then insert on the CPython code, source code, and then you would change the way that Python works, because you would be changing the interpreter. But this would be going the other way around. So if you want to go from C to Python. But if you're using scones, then the way to do it, I think, like from Python to C, C++, is to just dynamically generate the C++ file on build time based on Python variables. So it's like meta programming, basically. Just kind of what I'm doing here. But I'm basically just copying from them. That's what they do on the modules. So this code here is generating a file on build time. It's using scones to generate the file. And then it allows you to use Python to build the code inside of the file. Because if you think about it, code is just strings over a grammar. So what I was gonna do is because I think it's easier than, but actually I'm gonna have to, maybe I should just look into the documentation. Oh, no problem. But I am gonna print there inside of the functions that they use to see like from where the path is at, if there is a absolute path or if it's a relative path, and from where the relative path is. Just gonna look in geeks for geeks. The OS list dir method in Python is used to get the list of all files and directories, blah, blah, blah. Specify. The root directory. Then prints. So assume that it gets the relative path. So she probably puts the relative path from where the main sconstruct file is being run. So as far as I understand, the way that it works on scones is that the main class that they use is going to be the environment class, which they built on the first constructor. And then this class is like a manager, and all that it is doing is using all the logic that you put on the files, on the Python files, to build a giant command at the end that is just going to basically either call make or something like that to compile all the C++ files. Hey, what's up? And it is kind of confusing when it comes to the arguments as well. But that argument keyword there, because the confusing part is like, they allow you to put arguments for your own stuff, like custom arguments, by using these arguments special keyword here. So like scones uses Python to parse these files here, because these files don't have the .py extension. So they're basically creating like a, I'm not really sure if it's like a full language or if they're using regex or whatever they are doing, because I didn't look into the source code that much. But I think what they're doing is just parsing the file as if it is a Python file, probably. Yeah, it is as if it is a Python file, but they provide some environment variables that you can use, and one of them is arguments. So this one allows you to access whatever arguments you pass here after you run scones on the command line. So this allows you to put logic for different build systems you can do based on whatever key values you pass there as an arguments. So Godot has this, for example, when you put target equals editor, it's gonna run the build system that builds the editor. But if you don't put, if you put other different type of target, it's not going to be build the C++ files related to the editor. And it does basically this stuff based on these conditions here. But the confusing part is to understand, and this part I'm not 100% sure, I don't know how it works very well, the distinction between arguments that are specifically related to scons and arguments built by whoever is using scons as their build system tool. So I do think that scons itself has like some main arguments that they also allow you to put there. But usually I think what is going to happen is that you're just going to run scons, and then the key arguments that you pass on the command line execution is just going to be whatever you decide to put inside of the logic of the Python file. I think at the end there's another condition, but I don't remember really well how they do this. But when they're going to run the other files, yeah, so it's basically this Boolean variable here. So if don't pass target equals editor, it's not going to run this file here. And this is basically another special thing that scons creates, which is an environment function, let's say, that allows you to run any other Python file you want, in the same way that they are running the main sconstruct file. So in this case, they have a root sc sub file on the editor, which is the file that is going to allow them to put Python logic for compiling all the C++ files that the editor has. No, because I don't use it. I think that it depends on the way that you approach it. So if you... It's like the whole thing about... As always, fitness, I think, is the easiest way to like make analogies about this, but like some people are looking for the shortcuts. Let's say like how can I get fit in 6 weeks, like the 6-pack 6 weeks 6-pack type of thing. And that's delusional, because then like they're just trying to avoid the work, which is not realistic, because it's never going to be congruent. Like even if you achieve that, sooner or later you're going to come back to the previous lifestyle, and it's not sustainable. So if you're approaching AI in the same way, then it's going to be the same thing, because you're just viewing as a handicap. But if you view it as a tool, like for you to become better at learning, then the power goes back to you. So like instead of viewing, it's the difference between taking Ozempic, let's say, for example, to lose weight, and using an app that allows you to understand nutrition better, so you can make better choices when you eat. So that's how I try to view ChatGPT as well. So I'm not viewing it as something that is supposed to replace my thinking. I'm viewing as something that allows me to learn faster. So, but I think it is a difficult thing, and there's much more deeper issues with that as well, philosophical issues, because the tendency of everything. Like the biggest problem with AI when it comes to LLM is that you're putting the trust on the AI system. And it's harder because you lose credibility, because there's the diffusion of responsibility. So there's a problem with copyright systems, for example. So if you funnel everything through an AI, then you can say that you're not using copyright stuff because you're transforming the content. But it's like a hack, and the same thing happens with trust. So when you search for something on Google, if you look for the information on a site, you can make that site reliable for that, accountable for that information, because you know their business information and stuff like that. And even that has problems because of the vicious cycle of politics and economics, because money corrupts economics, because money is scalable and politics isn't. But with AIs, it becomes much harder, because it's like you're talking to a person, but the person is everyone. So there's no one to hold accountable besides the people that created the LLM, but they will admit that they don't understand how the LLM works. So like, how are we gonna make them accountable if it's like a extremely complex problem? Because it's very similar to trying to mold a person into saying whatever the person wants you, whatever you want the person to say. You're not going to be able to, it doesn't make sense for you to become accountable for what they say fully, because you don't have full control over their thinking. So it's like a blurry line. And then the biggest issue with that is that the conversions towards the new way that people search for information is going to be through, there's going to be these portals, which are the trusted authorities, which are going to be AIs, from which everyone interfaces with the information. And then that is going to get corrupted over time. It's the same problem that science has. That's why, like, one of the most important things when it comes to science is to say that correlation doesn't cause causation, because the way that people corrupt and try to push narratives is by framing things in a certain way. Because what matters in most situations that have nuance is going to be the context. And the context is frameable always, which means that you can set up experiments based on whatever you want, whatever agenda you want to push, because you can't reduce the outliers under statistics. So it becomes a vicious cycle. And also you have biases and stuff like that as well that naturally corrupts everything, because nobody knows the truth. And it's the problem with the misinformation stuff as well, because there is no such thing as misinformation, because no one knows what the truth is. Truth is always relative. So the objectivity is a conversion of a network, which is like the density of the network determines the relative objectivity that the network has, which is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Yeah, basically. It depends on the point of view, the person, that like the way the place you're coming from. I think for myself, obviously, I can't speak for anyone else as well. But for the way that I think is that if I use AI to become better, then it's not a problem, because I'm not coming from the place of trying to avoid doing the work and being delusional about. Because what happens then is that you become a slave. And just a natural tendency of human beings, which I have as well, because everyone's like that, we're constantly trying to minimize the energy you spend and the risk you take. So the natural tendency is just a comfort zone. And then it becomes a problem, because it becomes a crutch, and then that's how people get hijacked and brainwashed into following agendas that don't benefit them, because they don't want to think, and then they just want to project in everyone else. So they get manipulated, and that's the problem with AI. Yeah, that's what I mean. Is the place you're coming from. So like I say, use AI to solve the challenge instead of your brain to solve the challenge. So the way that I look at it is use AI to improve my brain to solve the challenge. But obviously, there's going to be gradients. And if you're talking about the macro perspective, then it's going to be whatever the power structure incentivizes, because that's going to be the natural equilibrium strategy for that environment. So from like your individual perspective, it makes sense to use AI to improve your brain, to become better and making decisions. But then on the macro perspective, you're going to have these forces that are outside of your control, because they are from the infrastructure of the current game theory of the systems at play. So you as an individual can change the geopolitical forces across the planet, because they're not powerful enough. So it doesn't make sense to focus on that. It's like saying that you shouldn't use a cell phone. Sure, you can use that. You can be an Amish or disconnect yourself from the society, but that's not really an option, because once society becomes powerful enough, it controls you, and then it can go whatever you were at and determine your behavior anyway, because it has more power. So the dominant national equilibrium strategy is the arms race, which forces everyone into a state where they have to comply. So the choice is an illusion. You can't really escape society, because it's determined by power and is a consequence of the systems, the structures of the systems. I forgot if in Python I can put, or maybe I can just do the string here. String interpolation. Yes, let me change this. Maybe I should put the try, actually. Because I think that the reason why they put the try here is that if you do have a folder but it doesn't have the header, then it's gonna crash. I guess I can try it, just see if it's gonna crash or not. It's gonna try. It's just gonna generate the file with the wrong code because the project doesn't have the folder. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure that this is the reason why they put there. So I'm just gonna put it again. Oh fuck! Close the wrong thing. I guess this part I don't. Maybe I do have to open. Yeah, so when you try to open the file, if the file doesn't exist, it's gonna complain. So it's joining the path, which is the root of the modules, with the register type. So this is basically just trying to open the register type from the root of the module. And it's better to do this way, because then if you generate the final file and the module doesn't have, it's gonna crash. It's gonna complain that the header doesn't exist. I have to change this as well. I'm probably gonna put path. So you just the name of the folder, I think. I'm gonna put folder or project folder. Yeah, so now let me think about the name of this. Maybe just put register project. That's whatever. Now, so each project is gonna have the register project header. Then on the register project header, I put whatever I want. Actually, I have to put the declaration of the function here. But I'm gonna do this only after I create the first project there. Oh, so at the end of the function as well, I have to put, I have to make error equals failed, and then put another error as well, because then it means that there is no folder for the current project. Or maybe, I think I have to put it on this. Actually, I think it doesn't matter probably if I put. I'm probably gonna put the condition outside of the function because of the thing that I was thinking about in the beginning, where because I'm not really sure how it's gonna work. Like the difference between, I think probably now, uh, because each time that I'm gonna create a project and I want to change the project from the code, I'm gonna have to manually do the folder anyway. So I think it makes more sense to just do like the same condition for both. And then I take care of the situation that the project doesn't have a scene inside of the code that is supposed to create the project, I think. Because it's going to be a specific to each case, and there's probably a easy way to, not an easy way, but there is definitely a way to handle the condition before. I'm not really sure which one is better though. The problem is that, yeah, I guess I'm just gonna do this way first, then later, like the more projects, because the only way that I'm gonna be able to know whether or not this way is kind of bad or not is after creating a bunch of projects. So if I try to create, then I see that I'm getting too many mistakes or it's annoying, then I go back and change this. But I'm just gonna leave it like this for now. Also here also I have to run the as construct. I'm just gonna put here. And I'm just gonna copy the pattern that they use as well. But they do it on a different way because of the way that this works here. But I think this part of the configuration I'm not gonna do because it makes sense for the modules, but doesn't make sense for what I'm trying to do, I think. Maybe I'm wrong, so I might have to change this at some point. So at what moment do they... Is it in here? Oh no, it's on the other... Yeah, I think it was on those functions here. Yeah, so it's here. I have to see... Oh, so this is the one that I was seeing there before. This is the array basically that is going to contain all the modules that are supported by the current build system. So it's basically going to be the same thing. I'm just going to... The only difference is going to be the path. Yeah, so... And then it makes it a lot easier because all I have to do is put an SC sub on each of the projects, and then I can do the same thing that they do on the modules because it's easier to... The only thing that is kind of annoying that I'm gonna... But I think I can use... No, I'm probably not gonna be... I can use the same one that I use here. I think this one I changed because yeah, I looked into the one that I have there. And then I'm basically just adding the C++ files as part of the editor build. Because I remember that I studied this the way that they were doing the editor. And because I'm making the headless part of the editor code, I'm just putting everything together. So maybe it's better to separate and do a module. But I think it's going to be, there's not enough the return on investment, I think. So where did I see? Oh, I think this is probably on the SC sub of the editor. But it doesn't matter that much because what I can do is instead of I just basically do the same thing inside of the SC sub of each project that I add there. I just import the environment and then I add the C++ files to the editor sources. And I think that should probably work. It might be different with the register types though. I think I'm gonna stop streaming now because I'm kind of tired already. Probably continue this a little bit. I forgot to put the timer. I think I'm gonna continue a little bit off stream and then just continue tomorrow or whatever. I hear they do it as a library. So let me... Yeah, I think that the register types is the one that I want to see if it... Like, how do they include the register types? Yeah, it's gonna be on the other parts, I think. So maybe I do need to clarify this stuff. I saw your title videos and it's very interesting how subject of videos reach your brain. I don't understand what you mean by that. I think it just adds the register types in the same way that, because on lastcons, when you add the C++ files, it automatically finds the header files for you. So it looks for the header files based on the C++ files dependencies. So whatever you include on the C++ file is gonna look for the header, and then it's gonna include that automatically. So I think that's how they are including the registers types there. So it doesn't matter. So I think I can do the way that I'm doing there, hopefully. And then if the thing is that it shouldn't be that big of a deal to add this stuff on the editor build anyway, because I think that the code to build the project is not going to be very large. It might be though, like it might make sense actually. I think it does make sense, but like it does make sense to make it as a library, but I'm not really sure if it makes sense to do that now, because it's going to be annoying, I think. So, but maybe it is as easy as copying this the way that they do here. So I think exports probably exposes the variable. Not really sure. That doesn't make sense because it clones here. So it is like they are cloning the environment and then they are exporting the environment. So I think they create another environment. So probably the way that this works is that in Python we have virtual environments as well that allow you to compartmentalize the different libraries in different like places. So usually in Python, every time you create a project, you're gonna initialize a virtual environment, which allows you to encapsulate the libraries that you use for that project. instead of having them exposed in the global environment, which might increase the risk that there's going to be conflicts on names and stuff like that in namespaces. So I think here is probably very similar, but I'm not 100% sure. I think here, when you clone the environment, you're creating a new environment. So this would be like creating a virtual environment. And then they are defining this C++ variable as a command to build this environment, or to specify that this is the environment related to. It's basically like creating a placeholder for the environment, I think. And then they expose this environment to the overall build by using this, I think. And then on these commands, they're probably building the header file there. But I'm not going to build this other. The main thing would be the library then. So they add the library to this new environment that they create here based on the module name. So maybe it's not that hard to. Even if it's not that hard, I should probably try to implement on steps. Ideas on my videos, I'm just, I don't have any ideas. I'm just streaming my learning process since I started learning how to code. So whatever I'm doing now, I'm just live streaming. And then I don't like thinking about it too much, to be honest. It's kind of annoying to find. But I think that it's better to put unique titles because obviously increases the chances that more people are going to watch and stuff like that. But I don't really think about too much. Just whatever I'm doing at the moment, I just put the title there. It's basically like the channel has all the, like, since I started learning how to code, basically, I started live streaming as I started learning how to code. And it's separated here between videos and live streams because when I started, YouTube didn't have the separation, and I started live streaming on Twitch. So I took the recordings of the live streams on Twitch and I put it here, but it's all live stream. And then from the live stream point is when they changed, but it's basically all live streams. Some of the videos are actually videos, so, but it's like smaller part of them. And probably like these ones at the end here. And some of these are actual videos, but most of them are just live streams. This function is the one that they use to find the module. So this should be the module path. So this should be the module string the way that I'm thinking about it now. And request is going to be false. So it's going to be here. Oh, so this is the function that it checks to see, because on the documentation they tell you as well that like it's required for each project to have this stuff here. So I was thinking about this as well. So maybe it's worth it to, and because the main difference there is that I'm gonna loop over the directory instead of doing this, but I think it would be probably nice to have this. So it joins the path. So maybe I should put this condition there on the loop. But I'm not going to put config.py. So they check to see if it's a module. Then they run this other function to get the files. Oh, so this is a function to check to see if the modules have more modules. So I think I'm just gonna copy this part here for now. And then I'm gonna put here. So this is the question is, what should I do if it doesn't have? Because I'm not I think it's not going to stop the build system if I put return. And then so maybe you just ask ChatGPT. I'm basically contemplating whether or not, like, what should I do here? So I think I'm just gonna ask if there's a way to break the build and just show a warning message or something like that. But I think if I do this, then it's probably gonna work. So yeah, let me, because it's not gonna run the function there. So I'm just gonna see if I can, yeah. So it gets from the module. So I think the path there is probably, it is from the root, I think. So this path that modules have is from the root of the project. So here they're probably importing this there somewhere. I import OS. Oh. This was OS error. I'm just gonna try to import OS and see what happens. It's probably from sys. Maybe OS path. I'm gonna test one by one because it's easier than just search there. I'm not really sure if it's the imports though. Oh, it's because it's not a Python file. Is the issue. Yeah, so I think because it's not a Python file, it's a file read by scones, maybe I can't import. Or like OS error is probably a built-in thing on Python. I searched there, so I think that's the reason why like it's different. Because that file, the SC sub file, is run through scons, so it depends on the way that they parse the file. But it's meant to work as Python code, but probably doesn't expose the built-ins, I think, or maybe doesn't expose all. It doesn't work. So I'm just gonna ask ChatGPT. I'm not really sure if this exists or not. If it doesn't, I'm just gonna look for a generic. I think accept exception, but it might not work as well. Yeah. Or maybe it's because of this indentation. It might be because of the. No, it was because of the indentation. I'm just gonna delete this stuff. So I don't think I'm gonna test this now. I'm just gonna stop streaming because I'm tired. The next thing to do is to just run this. I'm gonna take a break to clarify my mind, and then I'm gonna come back to see, because there is some nuance about the whether or not to check if it's a new project or whatever. But basically, just take a break to clarify in my mind how this is gonna work with the connection of the header files and what should I put there. That's actually the final thing that I have to do, that I have to see, is which might be very annoying. So maybe I'm probably gonna do this off stream. So I have to figure out on the main file, the setup function. So basically here, how does that work? And it's probably gonna be, it works with the macro, I think. But here there are no macros. So I want to understand how do they have to include anything to make that? Oh no, they have the header that I saw there. I forgot the name, but I just remember that I've seen that they hard code the include for the function. The declaration is hard coded and the definition is generated on runtime. So I think that they probably just include the header here. But I forgot the name of the, also, they include the generated one as well. Interesting. So I guess all I have to do is just include whatever. I'm already including the header that's gonna have the declaration of the function that is gonna be generated there. But I thought they would check for whether or not the file was generated to call the function. What was the name of the function? What's the name? Oh, it's just register modules. Yeah, so they just include here. Yeah, so I'm going to take a break now and then I'm going to test this upstream. Probably next time I'm just going to continue to follow the list that I have here. So after I make this work, then I'm going to create the first project, which I already did. So I'm going to show it here. Actually, I'm going to create a new project. It's weird. Doesn't have the... So maybe something went wrong because it doesn't have... the executable here. Oh, it's because of this. So I have to comment it out now. But I'm gonna create a new project, but I already created one where I manually put the editor nodes there. So I'm basically from the editor constructor here, the root node of the GUI for the editor is this one. Obviously this is going to be a child of the editor node itself, but the editor node inherits only from node. And if you're going to start from the editor, then you only have the options of node 3D. Actually, you have the custom now that I think about it. So I might change there on the thing. But what I did is basically just follow the code here and then just check the types of each one, the base types. And some of them are custom types that they create to add functionality. But I just got the type that they inherit from. So in this case, instead of putting editor title bar, I just put an HBox container, because what I'm trying to do is just create the layout that they use to build the editor on the editor, so that it becomes easier for me to think about. But doing manually is not very good because of the stuff that I said, that you can't really set you can set, but it's kind of annoying because I don't know how to set these values from the editor that they set here. So what I want to do now is create another project from scratch, where I'm just going to copy the code here, and instead of using the values the classes that they use, I'm just going to use the ones that the scene has access to. And then I'm going to try to set the values and build the layout from code first. Then after I do that, I'm going to open the editor, and then I'm going to study the layout from the editor to see, because the main thing that I want to clarify is how does it look and how does everything is related. Then after that, what I can do is just think about structure of functions that are going to have variations of the layout that are going to allow me to have standard starting points for projects. And this gets into the part that I said that is kind of confusing, because if I start a project from the editor, then it's going to be different than starting from code. But I think most of the time, probably, for now, I might be wrong, but it's probably makes more sense to start every project from the code, because that way I'm always going to have the layout. So if I want a layout that I don't have, then I just add another function that adds another layout. Or I make a function that's based on the arguments that the function receives is going to change the way that the layout behaves. And that's should allow me to always have like a easy starting point. And the part that is very challenging is figuring out, like, after that point, when you create, then there are some situations probably that I'm going to want to continue to build the project from the code, and some situations where I'm gonna continue to want to build from the editor. And this is gonna influence the way that the code structure is gonna work. But the way that I'm thinking about it now is that I'm doing everything based on the names of the nodes. So it doesn't matter how many times the code runs, because the nodes created, the parts of the scene created from code are distinguishable from based on their names, which means that it doesn't matter how many times you run. It doesn't add new nodes from the code. But probably what I'm gonna have to add as well is a function that removes nodes as well. Like in case I add a layout to a function that I started from the editor, for example, and then I just want to reset to the initial state, I have to traverse the tree and then remove the nodes that have the pattern for the name. So it's going to be basically based on the name. Another thing that I'm not really sure, I might have to change this, because the way that some of the nodes work from the editor, they just set the value that is displayed of the node. I think it's menu bar node and some other node. The names of the node are the ones that are displayed. But this one I checked with ChatGPT, and it seems that it is possible to set the name of the node for a different name that the one's that's gonna be displayed. All you have to do is just set the text after you set the name. So the way that I'm doing here is basically with this function here. So every time that I add nodes through code, I'm just gonna add using these functions that I have here. And they check to see if the name already exists on the hash set that I create, which is the global hash set. And this, I put the names here based on when I'm getting the state of the project, of the scenes. For each scene, I just put the names here. Yeah, set scene names on hash. So I just traverse the tree, and then I get all the names and I put on the hash, and then that prevents the nodes from being added twice from code, and then I have the separation. But the part that is kind of confusing is that if you have, like, how do you make sure if you have a mixed state? Because the main thing that matters is the state of the scene tree, which is the whole scene. And if you have levels, for example, where you build from code, and then other levels you build from the editor, then the structure of the code is going to have to reflect this relationship. But I think it's too difficult to think about a generic way to implement something like this, because it would involve metaprogramming and creating files from code, which I think is just it doesn't make sense. So I think for now, it makes more sense to think about on a case-by-case basis. And then whenever I'm building the project, I'm going to be forced to think about like the structure of the scene and how to change the functionality of the code so that it reflects the structure of the scene, depending on the way that I'm changing. Yeah, so I'm going to stop here, and next time I'm just going to continue the list that I have here of steps. So see you then.